Welcome to another edition of PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Jerron Harrington, and I welcome you this evening as we continue One Piece King of the Sea, What If Luffy Was Aquaman, Season 2, The Alabasta Saga. Last year, we started with Season 1, covering the East Blue Saga, the journey of Monkey D. Luffy, a story that I'm sure all of you are quite familiar with, but this time with a little bit of a twist. Instead of being given the powers of a rubber man from eating the Gumu Gumu no Mi, rather, Luffy's powers come from a new and distinct source, his very own. The power of his bloodline, an ancient bloodline on the brink of destruction, wanted by the entire world for the power that they possess, a power that can shape the fate of all humanity and everyone and everything on the earth. But Luffy, he must overcome these forces with a crew loyal and by his side, a loving master. Luffy has everything he needs to conquer the great seas, explore through the Grand Line, and find the legendary One Piece, the famed treasure of the Pirate King Gold D. Roger. But now, without further ado, let's get into this evening's video. As always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Wealth, fame, power. Gold Roger, the king of the pirates, attained this and everything else that the world had to offer. At his dying words, they drove countless souls to the seas. You want my treasure? You can have it. I left everything I gathered together in one place. Now, you just have to find it. These words lured countless men to the Grand Line in pursuit of dreams greater than they'd ever dared to imagine. This is the time known as the Great Pirate Era. It had been 20 years since those very words had been spoken. Words that sparked a next generation. People looking to achieve the impossible. To sail through uncharted territory, to go to places far and wide, all in pursuit of a dream. It's often said that the dreams of many die in the sea, buried in the watery depths far below. For a man to commit to his dream, he commits his very life. Everything that he embodies, his will, his passions, his hopes, his sorrows and his joys, they are all committed to the sea. And for many, dreams go unfulfilled. That was for many that attempted to find the One Piece. Despite many pirates who gained success, there was still yet to find the famed treasure of the last king of the pirates, Gold Roger. But now, a new young soul set his sights to the seas. His name, Monkey D. Luffy. But he is not alone in his endeavors, for by his side a small but motley crew of strong individuals, each of whom joined together by a common goal, to overcome the impossible, to make their dreams a reality, to reach the far ends of the world. By his side, his master, Vulko, along with his right-hand man, the three-wielding swordsman, Zoro, the navigator and cat burglar, Nami, the chef, Sanji, the marksman, Usopp, set a course on their ship, the Going Merry, Luffy and his crew had reached to Log Town before eventually finding themselves passing through the Great Reverse Mountain, an almost improbable landmass through which all four seas are connected that move atop the red line, the one large landmass of the earth, before entering into the Grand Line, the beginning of one's journey. However, as the crew were still continuing their descent down Reverse Mountain, as they would enter into the Grand Line by morning, a night that was filled with drink and revelry, and new discovery also, that came when they reflected on what Zoro had been able to do when they escaped from Logtown, when he created that green wall of energy. "How were you able to do that, Zoro?" Luffy would ask. "Yeah. What, did you eat a devil fruit or something?" Usopp would ask. "No, it was because of this." He showed them all the green ring that was on his right hand. "What is that?" Nami looked at curiously. "Looks kind of fancy. Is it worth anything? It's gotta be really valuable. It must be..." Volko took a deeper look at it. Everyone was quiet as now the elder of the group was deep in thought. "What is it? How did you get this?" Volko would ask. "Some old guy, I don't know, blonde, nearly white hair, rimmed glasses. He seemed like some ordinary guy, but he claimed to have been a part of Roger's crew, and..." "Roger's crew?" Luffy said excitedly. "You met one of Roger's crewmates? Oh man, you're so lucky, Zoro. I should have gone with you. I went to the execution site. I got to see what the Pirate King saw right before he got his, and all that. But seriously, you got to meet one of Roger's crewmates. That's incredible. Who was he? Who was he? Please tell me. Zoro, I have to know. Who was he?" "They call him many things," Volko would say. "To many, he was known as the Emerald Scholar of the Gold Roger's crew. To others, he was known as the Green Lantern. To his enemies, he was known as the Green Death. They called him Alan Scott." "Alan Scott?" Nami would ask. "He was a part of Roger's crew back in the day. You could say that he was the 1-2 punch that served under Gold D. Roger. He, along with Silver's Rayleigh, Emerald and Silver and Gold, they were the mighty trio of the Roger Pirates." "I see. So they all take their names after precious stones and metals," Nami would say. "Gold Roger for gold, this Silver's Rayleigh, the silver, and this Alan Scott, the emerald?" "Indeed, Nami. Quite studious. But what does the ring have to do with it?" "That ring is enchanted. It's said that it can bring anything you dream of to life, with concentration, with will and thought. Anything you can think of becomes possible." "I just thought of making a shield," Zoro would say, "to keep the cannon fire off our backs while we got out of there." That's what he told me, that with my willpower I could make anything. "Anything?" Sanji would say. "Hey, let me take a look at that. What the? Get your hands off of me. But come on, don't be selfish. I just want to see it. If I can actually use that thing, I can actually bring my... Ow! Ow! Ugh. Seriously, though," Zoro would say. "I mean, just because I can make anything, I don't even know what anything would be. I don't even know what I would want for real. Actually..." Zoro thought about it for a moment. As he held out his right hand, he thought intensely about what he wanted to make for himself. Currently, he only had 2 swords, as he was trying to replace what had already been broken. After his fight with Mihawk, he only had the Wado Ichimonji, the sword that he carried with him since he lost his childhood friend, and the sword he had bought from the sword shop, the cursed black and red blade, the Sandai Kitetsu. But he was still missing a 3rd blade. But he figured with this ring, he could make it possible. Everyone watched as Zoro would concentrate, before finally a green blade would manifest in his hand. Everyone was in awe of what they saw. Some of them even touching it, and it felt like a real blade, because it was. No way, Zoro thought. It's a sword created from your own will. I believe that even for a power as creative as this, I think this suits you rather than fine, don't you think? You will have a sword unlike any other. A sword that's as strong as your will, Zoro. As strong as my will. If you create a will that is unbreakable, so too will your sword. A sword that can never fail you. A sword that will be reliable at all times. You will have the sword of swords, because you will have a sword that cannot fall. This is what got Zoro interested. If he fought Mihawk again, if he had that ironclad will, then he too could create a sword that was unbreakable. Ironclad will. That's what he would name it. A sword that was the embodiment of his iron will. And Zoro would name this sword the Emerald Blade, Tama Ishi, or as translated, the Sword of Will. After the festivities and the myriad of questions that came after, as mostly everyone had gone to bed for the night, Zoro, still finding himself unable to sleep, sat atop of the ship enjoying a bottle of sake. As he did, Vulko, not being able to sleep much himself, would join with Zoro as they watched the ship continuing to descend down Reverse Mountain. Mind if I join you? Vulko would ask. No, not at all. Suit yourself. As the two would share and drink, Vulko would take a moment to thank Zoro. You sure know how to buy good sake, I'll tell you that, Vulko would say. Yeah, stuff's pretty good. But what do you want to thank me for? You've been a good friend to Luffy. He didn't have many of them in Fuchsia Village. Well, he did, but they all left one by one, till eventually the boy was on his own. How long have you known him? Well, officially, I didn't meet Luffy till he was about 10 years old, but I've known of him for a long time. I see. Are you family somehow? You know, given your situation? While we are both Atlanteans, it's quite different. I'm a pureblood and he's a hybrid. His father is human, his mother is Atlantean. So why exactly is it so dangerous for you guys to be known as Atlanteans? I mean, it's none of my business, but it's no problem. I figure if anyone should know, it should be you. Atlanteans, our genetic makeup It's far different from the humans, but I'm sure you're aware of that. Our bodies, our capabilities, they're quite valuable. Even if you were to have just some Atlantean inside of you, it opens up many possibilities. But the more pure-blooded of an Atlantean you are, your value only continues to rise. You see, we Atlanteans, we have it hardwired in our brains to be able to read distinct things that the world can't read. What, like a book or something? No, something far more dangerous than a book. Have you ever heard of a poneglyph? Yeah, I've heard about them. They're said to be these super rare things. I mean, I wouldn't know what one was if you told me. I've never seen it. I just know that they're pretty rare. Yes, and dangerous. So dangerous that they're outlawed in the world to read, or anyone that tries to read it, it's guilty of death. But Atlanteans, well, we have an uncanny ability. We can decipher a poneglyph with ease. It's as easy as breathing. The more pure-blooded you are, the easier it is to read. Luffy's never really cared for them, but if he saw his eyes on a poneglyph, he could read it with some minor difficulties, given that he is a half-breed. But for someone like me, I could read a poneglyph no problem. So I think you see where the problem lies. Not only are we valuable for our bodies, but also our eyes. The eyes of an Atlantean are extremely valuable. You mean to tell me that you're hunted down for your eyes? There have been stories. There are even tales of some who attempted to steal the eyes of an Atlantean and replace it with their own. And the few times that such a procedure even worked, well, I'm sure you know what happens next. You understand how dangerous it is. Yeah, no wonder why the world would want to hunt you down. And he wants to become king of the pirates. You know, I spent a long time trying to convince him to go down a different path, or to just give it up altogether. Unfortunately, I never could. The boy's tenacity, his drive, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. Eventually, I knew that dissuading him from the path would be impossible. So I did the only thing I could do. I promised that I would train him, that I would teach him, so that he would never be defeated. If he was going to be a pirate in this world, then I vowed to make him the strongest pirate that ever lived. A pirate that would surpass all other pirates. A pirate that no one would dare to cross. You've done a hell of a job. He's a natural as a fighter. And he's not afraid of anything, Zoro would say. Yes, but still trial and tribulation will come. And I'm afraid that one day he will be at his lowest point. And I believe that's when he'll need you the most. What about yourself? Zoro would ask. I've lived quite a long time, Zoro, Volko would say. I've seen much in this world, truly. But in all my years, I've never felt closer to death than I do now. It's not like I'm dying tomorrow or anything, but I just feel that my days on this earth are numbered. I know that while I'll be on this journey, I won't get to see it through till the end. Don't talk like that. We're gonna make it to the One Piece. And you're gonna be right there with them when it happens. I thank you for the vote of confidence, my friend. But if for any reason I shouldn't be, can he rely on you? Of course he can. That's why I'm here. The two would cheers to another drink as they watched the night sky overhead. By morning, the Going Merry would finally descend to the bottom of Reverse Mountain, making its way into the Grand Line. Here at this point in the story, the Straw Hats would still meet with a large whale called Laboon, as well as the crotchety old man that lived inside of it named Crocus. Along the way, they would have some mishaps, meeting with two ne'er-do-wells, a woman, a young girl by the name of Miss Wednesday, and a young man by the name of Mr. Nine. They were more of scoundrel than anything else, to Vulco especially, and they seemed to be would-be bandits that couldn't tell their left from their right, although they were dangerous with some bazookas that had little effect on them. But the Straw Hats would learn of the dilemma of Crocus, as well as the scarred whale that kept ramming its head into the Grand Line walls. It was about 50 years ago, a pirate crew had traveled through Reverse Mountain and left the whale behind, promising they would return. And sadly enough, they hadn't been back since. But Luffy, with his ability to speak with aquatic life, would be able to communicate and understand with what Laboon was trying to express. And after doing the unthinkable and having a tussle with the giant whale no less, the crew watching on from inside as Luffy would battle with the whale, eventually he would get it to calm down, promising that he would serve as his master and that Laboon would make its way through the Grand Line as he and the others would return for it. This promise enough settled down Laboon as it was finally able to find peace. There was also another issue that Nami was dealing with, and that was using her compass. Sure, being inside the body of a whale that had a trap door on the top of itself, that was strange enough, but what was even stranger was that her compass didn't work at all. Well, as Crocus would point out, using a compass in the Grand Line wasn't going to work very well. Because of the magnetic poles of the various islands, they were going to need something else, a specially made compass called a log pose. And, as it so happened, he had a spare one. Wasn't like he was going anywhere or had any intentions on using it, so he gave it to Nami and the crew. All they'd have to do was follow the direction of the log pose, and it would take them where they needed to be, the first island that they would come across. Using the log pose, they could travel from island to island and chart where they went, and eventually, as all log poses did, it would lead them to the final island, that being Laugh Tale, the home of the One Piece. This would set the Straw Hat Pirates on their destination, as their journey into the Grand Line would begin. Of course, the two would-be attackers, Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine, now being stuck with no place to go, would turn to the pirate crew that they had just attacked and would desperately ask for help. They needed to get back home to their island of Whiskey Peak, and they were willing to pay them handsomely for their efforts. Nami, of course, was willing to help anyone for the right price, even if they were just enemies, well, if you could call a would-be attacking enemy. And if they were really going to pay up the good stuff, then it was the least they could do getting them back to their island. Besides, she was their best navigator, and they were in desperate need of help. So, after the crew said their goodbyes to Laboon and to Crocus, they would set their sights on Whiskey Peak, the first stop of their journey into the Grand Line. But Vulko had a suspicious feeling. These two were hiding something. What in particular, he wasn't sure. But he'd been around the block, and he'd know better than to trust anyone blindingly. The Grand Line is a very dangerous place, unlike any of the four seas. The Grand Line is a place traveled by pirates famed throughout history. And it's also considered the graveyard of pirates, because many people who had ambitions and dreams, they often came to the Grand Line to die. And if they weren't careful, they'd end up like many of the poor souls that came before them, dead and forgotten at the bottom of the seas. This concludes One Piece King of the Sea, What If Luffy Was Aquaman, Season 2, Part 1. Now, a little disclaimer as we're doing the One Piece series. As you all know, One Piece is a long story. So to get through the material in a rather timely and concise manner while also adding to the story the elements of the Aquaman lore, mythos, and all other parts of the story that I want to tell, I do want to say that the function of this story will be different from a lot others that I do on the channel. For one, the original content will be the original content, so any battles that are new to the story or any battles that would have a twist to it, that's what I'm going to do in detail. But when it comes to the stuff that's canon, like the stuff that doesn't change at all, I'm just going to summarize that part in the story and continue. As you saw in this video, I basically summarized the Laboon arc at the end, and I did all of the original stuff in the first half of the video, primarily because there's no point in me trying to add detail to a part of the story that you've already seen, already read, and you already know. Like, it would be like trying to do a whole deep dive and recap of something that's already canon. So if we come to canon parts in the story, I'm just going to summarize it neatly but quickly so we can keep it going and we can do more of the original stuff. So that's kind of what I'm trying to go for with these videos. So if that format is something that you guys are okay with, please let me know. You know, I always want to try to get feedback when I do these types of stories, especially with One Piece, because again, One Piece is a long story, and it's going to take a lot for me just to get through the whole Alabasta saga. But I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you guys will enjoy this first part and everything else that's to come out as we continue with Season 2 of One Piece King of the Sea, What If Luffy Was Aquaman. And stay tuned tomorrow as we continue with Season 2, Part 2. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.